All right, here we
Now
go.
we're feeling good. Can you say normal things?
I'm so exhausted from all the
All
microphone
that work.
mayhem.
Do you need to take a second?
No.
You
Let's
good?
just get talking. I feel like that will warm you up.
All right.
More than everything.
All right. Hello, y'all. We are welcome today with Grant and Aurora. We are going to be talking about a bunch of different things, but really honored to have them here and just explore life, explore different conversations. And today we're going to get started by talking about discipline equals freedom. So this concept of really focusing on discipline being the main arbitrator of success, really. So I know Grant has, in a past life, was a basketball collegiate athlete. So I'm sure he had a very disciplined regimen as it came to training and making sure that he was in the best shape possible to perform. So Grant, do you want to talk about how you've experienced discipline in your own life and how that has been freeing and enabling for you?
Yes, I would love to. I would love to. Yeah. I guess, looking back on really my life, I think one of the biggest driving forces of who I've become and the man I am today is all hinged on a lot of my athletic background. And a lot of that playing sports was a huge part. Basketball, collegiate, Texas A&M, like the discipline required to obviously play at that level combined with the academic workload is massive. And so there's a lot of, in order to make it, you have to have inherent discipline in that lifestyle. And so I guess the whole concept of discipline equals freedom, if I think about it more abstractly too, is we think a lot of times, at least I do, we want to have freedom, especially financial freedom is the big buzzword of our age demographic. We're gonna make TikTok videos and we're gonna buy Airbnbs and rent them out, and we're gonna do drop shipping so that we can attain this thing called financial freedom, or freedom more broadly. But it's not, freedom in itself is not necessarily the goal. It's we still need this disciplined structure in our life to have this freedom of life. I don't know how I'm saying.
You said some good stuff there.
Yeah. Anyway, but yeah.
Yeah, no, you said, I think, you kind of hit the nail on the head of how our generation views financial freedom as this ultimate goal, and they kind of forget about themselves really in the process and nurturing what's going on right now. It's I'm not okay until I reach this level of financial freedom, but then when I get there, everything's kosher, you know? But I think a lot of people view freedom as doing whatever you want to do when you want to do it.
Yeah.
And I think that is actually not what freedom is. You know, I think there are actually restrictions that you place on yourself that will enable you to actually be free. And I think that's because the natural state that we exist in is not one that goes to a state of success and achievement and grounding. If you just do whatever you want openly, you can often just go off the rails.
It's chaos.
It's chaos,
yeah.
Exactly. It's
entropy.
It's entropy, it's randomness. There's this huge movement now with sexual empowerment of, well, freedom is just having sex with whoever you want when you want, and that's what real freedom is, and this new wave of feminism and empowering women to just go out and live freely sexually. But is that really freedom? You know, yes, they are making their own decisions, but what are the repercussions of some of those decisions? So for me with discipline, I think just recently with physical discipline of I'm going to make sure every single day I am putting myself through physical turmoil, physical stress, where I am making sure that I'm in the gym, doing my lifts, working on my cardio, like really, really, like even when I don't feel like it, like even if I don't want to go to the gym and I just want to sleep and I just want to sit, I'm like, no, I'm going to go anyway because I've chosen to have this physical discipline.
Right.
And because of that decision, the freedom that I have is, oh, now I'm operating to my physical potential, right? That's freeing, that's empowering. And that's what real freedom is, not saying, oh, I don't have to go to the gym. I could just sit on the couch and watch Netflix or whatever other, sloth activity there is. But by doing the disciplined action, that brings about my best self. And living within your best self is freedom.
It's funny because I feel like it's completely counterintuitive.
Yeah.
Like you think that freedom, like you're saying, is just doing whatever you want. It's this chaos. It's this like ultimate choice.
Mm-hmm.
But really, like it comes from having like a daily structure, having daily practices, like the things that are not fun and don't feel freeing. Like it's not freeing to wake up at 5 a.m. and journal and do your yoga practice and then go to the gym.
Mm-hmm.
But in the end, those are kind of the things that like free you from stress,
Yeah.
free you from worry. Can free you financially. Like it's just counterintuitive.
We were talking about this last night with all the different religions that are in the world, and there's so many different like philosophies and methodologies behind all of them that basically wrap up and basically consume what that thing is like. And for example, what's going on in the Middle East with
I don't know her name, but like the women like burning their hijabs and stuff because
right.
the one woman was like beaten to death by the authorities. I'm not qualified to talk about this because I don't know the facts, but
it's an extreme example, probably not the right one, and maybe we can talk about better examples, but like the discipline required. Let's maybe bring up the example of Mormon people. Who always seem to be super happy, super like cheery and fulfilled, and they have this like super awesome community.
They're really good looking.
And
they are.
it's like you would look at it from the outside, maybe as a more modern day, at the very least, like secular, 21st century person, and be like, dude, why are you doing all these things? Like, why are you not having sex till marriage? Why are you like
not drinking alcohol?
Yeah.
Or coffee even.
Or coffee.
Right.
Yeah.
And like going around on mission trips and like giving so much of your time to other people, XYZ, but there maybe is something to this discipline that, in this example, Mormons are acting out in their lives that allows them sort of, at least seems like, spiritual freedom, in that something, if you just are like, I want to be free to sit on the couch and be a lazy sack, like you're saying, like, is that really freedom, or is that just entropy and chaos? So.
Yeah. All right, so the next topic that we were going to talk about is around fear. So y'all are thinking about making content, potentially. We got a Southeast Asia trip coming up in the next couple months. So I was remarking about just recently posting videos, posting on social media, trying to make content. And the fear that I had was around people that I've met in my past, like my current connections and people that I'm connected to, not liking me or not liking what I was posting, and just receiving negative judgment from my own community. But really, to be successful in social media and content, it's about getting within the algorithm and new people finding what you're posting to be good. So it doesn't really matter about who you've connected with already, because that number of connections is so limited. As one person can't connect with millions and millions of people. So that was just an interesting, sort of motivating thought, that I don't really have to care what the people that I've connected with do think. And to go along with that, just to say that if I'm putting myself out there and speaking my mind, speaking my opinion, and speaking about things that I really care about, I'm going to want the people that I've connected with to know that, And the ones that resonate with the things I say, that'll bring us closer. And then the ones that don't, that'll be like, oh, well, great. Now they actually know who I am, to where the relationships that I'm building are authentic. So yeah, you guys were just saying that you thought that was something that you could relate to as well last night.
Totally. Yeah, I think we definitely share that fear. I think anybody who goes on like this kind of journey of even thinking that they might want to create content is immediately paralyzed by the idea that like everyone they know is watching them.
Yeah.
Which, first of all, probably not that many people even care.
Yeah.
You know, like nobody's judging you. Everybody's worried about themselves. But it's definitely a real fear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know for me it is.
Yeah, I think a lot of the fear is rooted in being vulnerable, of course, and then through that being fully known. And if you're fully known and you lay everything on the line and you reject it, then that's like
the real you is rejected. Yeah.
The real you is like getting just a knife to the heart.
Yeah.
And so the remedy to that for most people is just to
not even try.
Keep your cards like
Fear
close.
wins when you don't even try.
Right.
You know?
So I think that's where a lot of people get comfortable with doing the things that their peers are kind of doing, and people just replicate what's maybe expected of them socially. Here in South Lake, it's like maybe get a consulting job, maybe it's have some sort of higher ranking business degree, maybe you go back and get your master's so that you can keep moving up the ranks, and maybe you do all of that without ever stopping to ask like what actually makes me fulfilled and brings meaning to my life.
Yeah.
And so I know. Right.
It's like easier to just go on the path that's laid out before you than to forge your own.
Yeah.
I think that's scary.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Just the concept of fear in general is a very deep one. It's a spiritual concept. It's like there's sort of a primal or primitive fear that we have as human beings of sensing of danger. Like if I see a large tiger nearby, or if I see like an aggressive person coming at me, like there's this like fear of your own physical safety. But then there's concepts of fear as it pertains to deep spiritual oneness and wellness. Like I have a deep spiritual fear of just not like my energy, my aura not being okay, and it's I think it stems from just how we have in our DNA this concept of not wanting to be rejected, because if we're rejected from the group, if we're rejected socially, then that's not good for our survival. So we've been wired as human beings to care what other people think and fit in, so that way our safety as an individual is maintained. But then there's this deeper fear of things in our head, and it can fester and it compounds. That's something we were talking about before, is this compounding and looping and cyclical nature of fear as it grows and becomes more and more, right? And if you think about it, fear is not actually real as it represents within the reality and ether. If Grant is sitting over here and he's just sitting down and worrying and constantly worrying about whatever, but if he's just like festering and worrying, right? If I come into this space, I have no idea about what he's worrying about, and his worrying only pertains in his head and in his reality. Outside of that reality, there's no worrying going on. In the outside world, in the greater ether, there's no real fear. There's no real physical manifestation of fear, but it's become real to you because it has shaped and a lot of times ruined your perspective, your life force. So it's really important to, and this is why a lot of times I really try practicing of grounding and mindfulness within my physical situation and where I'm at, because if I can more ground myself to both what's real and going on within this present moment, fear doesn't necessarily play as big of a role because it's not real. You know, it's like a mindset that that is meant to keep us alive, but it can be extremely powerful and it can magnify on top of itself. So yeah, that's why I really try to ground myself in my physical environment, but then also like what I believe is like my spiritual identity. I try to I need to stop saying ground myself. There's no grinding going on all the time, but I try to ground myself in the values and higher being that I align myself with, and none of that higher value and purpose is within fear. So I just like I create and I manifest a Jack Garda life form that doesn't worry about fear, that isn't a slave to fear, but is standing confidently within my existential purpose and my existential being.
Do you visualize it? Like, is it something that you're visualizing this person that's outside of yourself, or is it you?
It's me.
It's just you.
It's me. It's how I practice manifestation, which has been like a new thing for me. I used to see it as hippy dippy and airy and just sort of like, you know, like astrology mommy talk. But you know, now what I do with it is I say, who is the highest version of myself that I really want to be like goals me, like the type of me physically, the type of me mentally, the type of me spiritually, the type of me relationally, like the idyllic me. I'm going to identify with that person now. Like I'm going to act like that is me now. And then as I identify with that, my subconscious and conscious will pull itself towards this state of, and then I will become more and more like that person, like both as I know that I am and even just like in the outskirts. Because before I've identified with like the worst things that people have said about me, and like the most afraid things that I thought were going to happen, I would just act like they were going to happen, but I would identify with that, and then I could feel my spirit like pulling towards this like more negative state. So the subconscious and your self concept, like how you really view yourself from an identity standpoint, is so freaking powerful, because you will become what you believe of yourself. Like you are limited and capped towards what you think your own potential is. You know what I mean? Yeah. So you really have to and there's so much potential that we have within ourselves that it's kind of like you will rise according to what you think is possible for yourself. So to me, manifestation is all about I'm going to lean in towards the best self that I can be, you know? So, yeah.
What does that sound? What does that look like for you? What the highest version of yourself in all these different categories? What are the words or descriptors, or what does that peak state of you look like? That's
a great question, and this is a new practice that I've started doing. But I kind of start with just a general sort of like peace and strength. Those are like two values that I really try to embody in my life, of like deep-rooted peace, like unaffection towards life circumstance, like a grit almost, and then strength, like the courage to step in to what I'm thinking and what I'm feeling and like really be myself no matter what sort of like fear I may have. So just sitting into those general principles and energies of peace and strength is something I really try to embody. Then like on a more specific level, like I am manifesting a me who has a lot of good quality friends, right? I feel like a lot of us in our 20s and 30s can feel like they're not really well socially connected. So I want to embody being a really good friend to people and having really good friends. And that is, so I'll literally think about, like, yeah, I am someone who has good quality friendships. I am a good friend. I bring value to other people. People want and desire to be around me. And I sit in that mindset. And then, oh, that's now how I'm thinking. And that's I'm doubling down on that value that I have in my life. And I'm actually going out and seeking those things. Before, my subconscious would say, people don't like me. I'm too much. I spend all my time on social media, so I can't really make good friends. I'm living with my parents, so I feel really socially isolated. And if I do go out and make an effort, then people aren't going to want to see me. Like, these are just like the anxious thoughts, like the demons in my head, you know? And manifesting is stepping into that better mindset and those goals that you have for yourself, but now, like identifying with that goal state now. So socially is like a big one that I'll do. Physically, I'll manifest like I want to have my dream body where I am, you know, muscular and lean and I look good and I feel good and I feel powerful, and like manifesting that now. That's how I am now. So then when I'm going about my day, it's like I'm going to make sure that I'm eating well because that's aligned with my identity. I am like a physical, really in shape guy. So now I'm going to do behaviors that are aligned with my identity, right? And it's just like a total change of like self-concept, which to me has been transformational. This has been like a new thing in like the last like week or so that I've really been trying to prioritize. But yeah, so like physically doing that too. And then besides that, just also with like working, like my work ethic. That's like probably the last final thing is, you know, like I've been manifesting social success, like we talked a lot last night about mission, like what I really want to do in my life. So I've been manifesting being able to bring about my message and bring about my mission in a way that is successful, in a way that helps people, in a way that empowers people, and I'm successful doing it. But even though I'm not technically successful, you know, I just started. I'm identifying with that success now. And because I'm identifying with that now, like last night I spent hours and hours teaching myself how to edit, you know, like I'm doing the work now that's aligned with that goal state, all because my identity is something that is positive and self-empowering. So those are the 3 different ways.
Yeah.
Just off the top of my head.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's funny because I just started rereading Atomic Habits.
Yeah.
Have you read that book?
Yeah.
It's
Habit stacking, that's a good.
Yeah.
That's something that's
they,
like probably one takeaway I have. But
they have it's the circles. There's a.
Start with one.
I'm also reading. I'm reading and we're incorporating into our blog as far as helping us get to a mission statement or a deeper core why and identity behind the thing that we're creating ultimately. I'll start with Atomic Habits, but they have essentially there's different like circles that help you get to building habits. And so the first one, the outer circle, is like what you do. The second one is how you do it, and then the inner circle is like your identity. It's who you are. So it's like you're saying you can either say I want to get shredded. That's like what you want, and then you can think about how you're going to do it with different, you know, workout plans, routines. Maybe you have a diet incorporated in there. But if you don't ultimately believe like I am a fit, like I'm an athlete, I'm a like person who just is fit, then those things can wither away. Like those habits won't
stick.
Manifest. And it's bi-directional, so you can do enough of those what's and how's to ultimately like make yourself believe that you are that person. Like if you write in a journal every single day, like I'm a person in journals, I'm a journaler, I'm a writer. But you could also, if you've never done something before, like you're saying, you can say like if you've never traveled before, I'm a traveler. Like I like to go out. This is something I'm really curious about.
Yeah.
I'm someone who travels, and then those what's and how's kind of
Work himself out.
fall in line.
It's a beautiful thing, and I think a lot of Christians don't like the term manifestation because they're playing God, and they're saying, oh, like I'm God, I'm manifesting my reality, I'm not trusting God. But to me, it's like, whoa, like, do you not realize the power that you have within you also? Like, you have the Holy Spirit within you. Like, you are a son or daughter of God. Like, God is calling you into being the best version of yourself. So create your best reality. Create the life you want in this world. And manifest it. You know, like they're not mutually exclusive.
Right, manifestation and prayer are
Yeah.
kind of similar.
Yeah.
And, like,
They
they're
go
not-
hand in hand.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah, just different ways of looking at the same thing.
Yeah. So, topic on spirituality. So, last night we were talking about spirituality, and I think what I love about Grant and Aurora is they're very open-minded people. They are open to different schools of thought. I think at the core of who they are is they are seeking truth. They are really trying just to pursue truth in the best way that has been revealed to them, and they're kind of open to follow and just entertain different ideas and convictions that really resonate with them most closely. So I was talking about my own spiritual practice and my own spiritual life that I've had, and for a while I was agnostic, where I thought there was probably a God. I would look at the ornate intricacies of the universe and the detail that goes into anything from the way a human cell is constructed, or the reproduction process goes down, or the beautiful mountains, or anything else that just seemed to be outside of pure entropy. It seemed as though it begged the question of perhaps a creator. So something I was open to, but I didn't really relate to in a spiritual way that gripped my heart and changed my identity and changed really who I was. I had grown up Roman Catholic and intellectually understood a lot about the church and theology and who Catholics say that Jesus Christ is and what it means to be a Christian, but I didn't really feel it, and the masses just seemed formulaic. It kind of just seemed like I was going through the motions, quite methodical, and it didn't really change me. In fact, it brought a lot of guilt. It brought a lot of me feeling unworthy. It brought a lot of, honestly, not really empowering type energy. Kind of, I felt in a way confused and fearful. That's just how I felt in my experience with a lot of Catholicism. But I received my own spiritual practice and my own spiritual takeaway by, instead of trying to rationalize and create logical responses to every single different religion and why I should actually believe what I believe in from a rational standpoint, because that's kind of what I did. I looked at Judaism, I looked at Islam, I looked at all the different Christian sects, because there's thousands of them, and the difference between Roman Catholicism and Greek Orthodox and all of this, and it was just like this giant puzzle piece that I couldn't figure out, and I was left stumped. So then I didn't really care about really going into the spiritual life, because rationally it was too complex for me to really formulate any sort of simple resolution to. But something that I shared with y'all last night, the biggest takeaway that I had and the biggest, honestly, like spiritual transformation that I encountered was saying, okay, let's just put that on the wayside for now. I feel like the spirit is real. I feel like energy is real. I feel like there is something deeper and truer than the physical reality that we experience on life. I feel it. I can't describe it, but I feel like there's something bigger going on. And I said, okay, what are the times in my life that I experienced those higher energy things? What are the times in my life where I felt more than physical, where I felt supernatural, maybe is the word, I'm not sure.
Close to God.
Yeah. And those times have been where I have found love, like when I felt like a deep human connection towards another person, or the relationships that I've had that have just meant the world to me, or how I've experienced beauty by looking at a mountain range, or looking at someone that I deeply care about, or just having fun, right? Like just having like an exhilarating experience. Like these sort of moments in my life where I say, there's a beauty there, there's a deeper value there, and that speaks to me, right? So what I did is I identified myself with these higher values as things that I want to live within and see as that's kind of how I view God is love. God is this higher power. God is the higher good, like God resembles the highest and best, like the quintessential goodness that any part of life you ever encountered in any part of your life. That's to me what God is. So then when I read the Bible, I look at Jesus as this physical embodiment and representation of this idyllic God. And when I look at that, the more that I see Jesus, the more that I fall in love with God, because God is just like a term. It's just kind of like it's an abstract concept a lot of times, but in the Gospels and in the Bible, you can see like a physical, direct representation of that love, of that God, where it's very relatable. It's like a bridge connecting you to this higher power in a very direct way. So when I read the Bible, and I'm currently not even going to a church really that I really connect with, I've made this spiritual practice my own, where I'm trying to connect with those higher values that I've identified by looking at the person of Jesus Christ and other truths that I've seen throughout the Bible. But I'm also open to so many other schools of thought and so many other practices that are also benefited my life. Like I've practiced Stoicism. Grant's going to say a little bit about Stoicism. I practiced a lot of Buddhist practices of mindfulness. Aurora's going to talk about mindfulness. I don't want to close off and be so myopic as it pertains to spiritual truths that can empower you, because there's so many different cultures and lives that maybe they have something valuable to say. Maybe God has revealed himself or herself, whatever. God has revealed himself to people in different ways. So, yeah, that was a lot, but...
No, that's great. I think after we were talking last night, kind of along these same lines, we sort of had a question for you, or at least I did. And you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, or if you don't necessarily know how, but I feel like you are very open-minded. Like, you have explored other schools of thought. You have this Catholic upbringing. So for you, like, why Jesus?
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to other, like, why not the Buddha? Why not, other, like, schools of thought, other religious figures that have lived over time? Why not Gandhi? Like, why not these other people who did amazing things? Like, this is not in any way an attack on Jesus. I want to know for you why his story is, like, the quintessential, why it's it. Do you think it's just, like, a product of being raised in the West, of that being the story that you know best, most intimately? Like, what do you think?
Well, that is a good point, as my exposure to religious doctrines, the most exposure that I've had has been to Jesus, right? And that's also another reason why I preface by saying Jesus is just what I have identified with most, but I am so, like, I am really just trying to find truth, like, you know what I mean? Like, that's really it.
Yeah.
What makes Jesus really special is, one, looking at the life of Jesus Christ and just how he treated people. It speaks to my heart. Like, he talks to the tax collectors. He talks to the prostitutes. At that time, the tax collectors, like, you avoided them like the plague. Like, you hated the tax collectors. He talks to the prostitutes, and he looks at them directly in the eyes with love, and just has a certain way of connecting and empathizing with people regardless of what their social standing is, that I think is just, it's resonant of love. So that's just purely with, like, how he acted, and like and he was going around, like, healing the blind, like, healing the sick, like, like raising the dead with like literally, like, he was a solid dude. But
for sure,
more so also is how he shows us that death is not the final answer, like in a tangible way, right? Because I don't believe death is the final answer, even without like my Christian lens. But it's kind of impossible to believe that death is the final answer if you believe in Jesus, because we see in his life, death, and then resurrection that through him, like literally, he is overcoming death. But the beauty of it is that it is through love. It is through God becoming Jesus and showing us that believing in this higher concept of love, the result of that is the resurrection. The end of his entire testimony in the Bible is his resurrection and overcoming death. So that to me is like extremely powerful. I was talking to you about this last night. How I try to talk about it is pointing towards how Jesus is love. Yeah. Pointing towards how God is love and shown in Jesus Christ. Yeah. I don't like the rhetoric of, if you don't believe in this, then you're going to go to hell forever and you're going to spend your entire existence in suffering. Like that's not helpful. That's not helpful. That was like the comparison I made last night, where I said, Grant, if you had a gun to head to Aurora's head and you said, if you don't marry me for the rest of our lives, then I'm going to shoot you. You know what I mean? Like that doesn't, Aurora doesn't perk up and go, oh, good deal it's not a good deal. But if you say, Aurora, I can promise you a life that will be enriched, and I can promise you that I will embody the best husband and man and partner that you will ever experience, and I commit to you and I will show you love every single day, then she'll say, wow, like, that's love. Like, I want to come closer to that, right? So that's how I try to communicate the story of Jesus Christ, is how it's actually affected me in a way that I want to draw near. Because when I was agnostic and I was trying out like big church, Protestant, non-denominational Christianity, that was a lot of the vibe. That was a lot of the I don't know, the feeling that I was getting around there. I don't know if you guys have felt like that, but that's how I felt when I was in those kind of circles. I was like, that's not it.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because there's just so many pathways in spirituality, and if the goal, which I think it is the case for most religions and philosophies of life, is to connect to God and in other words, to like feel that love that you can only really experience, and it's not something you can conceptualize or really communicate with words like what that is, but feel that full embodiment of love through a connection with God. Like the different, I was thinking about this last night, like, does it mean that there is a single pathway to getting to that destination, or in the same way that there are hundreds of different languages in the world that allow us to communicate together as humans, with I think the end purpose of these languages to connect to each other? Are there hundreds of different religions, thousands of different religions, with the intention to connect to God and feel love, and everyone's like has a different dialect and a different, just as we have different languages, there's different religions that allow us to get to that same point. Yeah. There are better languages, maybe there are more prevalent languages. Certainly English is most prevalent, Christianity seems to be most prevalent. Does that mean they're the most effective, or is it just
the most popular,
widespread? Yeah. For some other reason, I don't know, but I think the question, still does kind of remain like, what is so compelling about the Christian narrative and about Jesus' life, and what is the case that can be made for why one should follow, maybe not exclusively, but primarily the teachings of Christ over something else?
I think that's a really, really, really valid point. One thing I do want to say in response to that is, I think a lot of people, myself included before, get caught up in the multiplicity of options that it's overwhelming, and then they don't do the walk themselves. I think forget what everyone's saying. Self-examine. At the end of the day, it's your life that you have responsibility for, and that's it. People can think different things all they want, but you're not inside their head.
Right.
It's like you gotta find your spiritual truth and your connection to divine, because at the end of the day, that's the only thing you have at the end of your life. Your physical body will end one day. We're all born with a death sentence, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you need to do the work, the introspection, the processing, the grounding in who you are to determine. Like when I look at people that say there's too many religions, how do we know which one's right? I'm just gonna write it off, and I'm just gonna focus on different distractions for the rest of my life, and then that's it.
Right. That's not the answer.
I'm like, bro.
Yeah.
You got a spirit, and like, do you think you have a spirit inside you? Like, do you recognize that you have an energy and force, like a soul inside of you that is begging to be cultivated and nurtured? It's like, okay, totally cool if you're not Christian, but figure out what you really identify with. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's all I gotta say about that.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, there's hundreds of, maybe thousands of diets. It doesn't mean you should just say, fuck it,
Yeah.
I'm gonna eat 20
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hundreds of thousands of workout routines. Doesn't mean you should just say, fuck it, I'm not gonna try it.
I'm not gonna work out. Yeah.
So, but then, yeah, it does get confusing. It does get
Overwhelming.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's okay.
I think to your point, just picking what works for you
Yeah.
and not worrying about the rest.
And just taking the step, like being willing to take the step, and then the next one, and then the next one, and then like, oh, this is not that valley I want to actually climb back down, find the next, hill to start climbing back up, being willing to fail, be wrong, all those things have to be at the center in order to find the ultimate truth that you're looking for. But those are all hard qualities.
You have to do the work.
Yeah,
You
have
can't
to
just
do.
pick the path. You then
Exactly.
have to follow it to some degree
Yeah.
to reap the benefits.
Yeah.
Know God in your own way.
Do you want to talk about Stoicism, Grant?
Yeah, I mean, Stoicism is definitely, it's more of a philosophy of life than it is it's definitely not a religion. It's kind of was spearheaded by a lot of different folks, but Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, some of these philosophers from hundreds of years ago who, Marcus Aurelius had Meditations, which was just his own like personal journal that eventually got published into a book, and which is kind of funny that we're now like people are reading it and studying it, and this dude was just like writing
life notes.
But the biggest thing for me, the meta takeaway, at least how I apply Stoicism and try to apply it to my life, is like, what can I control, what can I not, and then focus on only the things that are within my control. And things like, politics, like things going on globally, there's a lot of that stuff that's just so far outside of my control that people like put so much mental bandwidth into, and it just.
Do you watch the news?
Never.
Yeah.
No.
I think it's low vibrational. I think it's really
is.
negative and no bearing on your direct life, really.
Yeah. So it's like, okay, well, I can't, the news story that Shirley's playing in the morning about some like mugging, armed robbery that's going on, like
fear.
I mean, and part of it, some of it I feel guilty about, like not knowing what's going on.
But why I feel like that's people that judge you for not, you know what I mean? That's like a judgment. People are like, oh wow, you don't care about your community and what's going outside. It's like, no, I do, but that doesn't really pertain to my daily life in a direct way.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's kind of like taking care of yourself first. you
Yeah.
know, maybe by not watching the news.
Yeah.
Like,
Gotta
if
put
it
the
is,
air mask on.
right, yes, put it into the oxygen mask. We had to go there.
Yeah, I gotta say it.
Um,
So Aurora is a big proponent of Buddhism. She loves yoga. Do you want to just tell us a little bit of what you felt the deepest spiritual truths that you've experienced in your walk have been? Yeah.
Well, so for me, like, Buddhism is useful because, similar to Stoicism, it's a philosophy,
Mhm.
not a religion. So I think that made me feel safer in a way, as someone who doesn't identify as necessarily religious. And it's also like, it lays a really practical foundation. Like, here are steps laid out for you, like the eightfold
Path.
literally right here. This is what you do. And so it's really practical in that way. I think kind of similar to what Grant was saying about Stoicism as well. This idea just sort of parallels is like, obviously non-attachment is huge in Buddhism.
Mhm.
There's this idea that, you know, there is suffering. Suffering comes from your attachments. There's a way to not feel that suffering in the ways they full path, right? Like, that's the essence of Buddhism. But non-attachment as a philosophy, I feel like can be super helpful.
Totally.
Yeah.
Anything else about like yoga or like love or spiritual truths that like you feel like is your kind of rock and your foundation for your spiritual life?
It's just like, for
And you may
me,
not have a
well, talking about spirituality, like, for me, it's something that's it's such a personal experience.
Mhm.
And it's not really something that I necessarily like relate to through others, so it's hard for me to articulate
Totally.
because I can't say I'm a Christian and this is what I believe, because what I believe is so kind of abstract and I'm still figuring it out. And really, like, there are things from different philosophies and different religions that I do believe and that I find really helpful. But then again, it's just like such a personal journey
Totally.
that I don't really know how to talk about it. So maybe just edit me out.
No, it's okay. It's okay. Like it's a journey, and it's a journey on its own. Like being able to articulate is a completely, another thing. So.
Yeah, it's just like it's not something that I feel prepared to articulate.
That's totally cool.
Yeah.
It's really cool. Well, we can.
Okay.
No, you're good. You're good. We can hop into the relationship. So, Grant and Aurora are dating, boyfriend and girlfriend.
Yeah.
They have been dating for 1 year and 3 months, I think. Hopefully, I got that right.
Something like that.
Something like that. And I think a lot of people watching are kind of in this world of modern dating where, it's not the most comfortable process. It is not the best process. There are a lot of twists and turns and lefts and rights that might leave you feeling not the best. So, yeah, would love to hear more about y'all. Maybe how we could start with y'all just talking about boundaries, kind of like the opposite of the lovey-dovey stuff, but the important stuff of, have you guys set any boundaries for yourself? Because you're still responsible for your own life, independent of the other person. But have you set up any boundaries for yourselves within your relationship?
You want to speak to that first?
I think you should speak to that first.
As far as boundaries go, I mean, so we met in Phoenix a little over a year ago.
Why don't you tell them how you guys met? I think.
Yeah. Well, we met on Hinge.
This is an ad for Hinge.
One does. On Hinge.
It works sometimes.
And the first date was at a hot yoga studio, and the story is interesting, but we don't have to get into it necessarily now. But and we had like some really deep conversations after the yoga session. We went to get smoothies, and I think like both of us coming out of some past failed relationships and experimenting, like rubbing shoulders with figuring out what we didn't want in a partner and what we like valued ourselves individually. we were able to then come together, and like I think it just takes time and a willingness to like continuously put yourself out there, and like we were talking about last night, not being afraid to like be known and be vulnerable and like express what's on your heart without fear that it's going to come across in some like corny way, or that it's not, you know, you haven't waited 36 hours after texting her on the first date because that's what some blog says you have to do or whatever. I think being just like really real and genuine after years of like mishaps and failed experiments and doing like the deep inner work individually was what allowed us to come together and have like really honest, genuine connection in those first several dates, which, you know, ultimately led to some other interesting decisions around.
It's funny because in the beginning I feel like we're talking about boundaries, right? And there's this kind of thing where you either like people have no boundaries with each other from the beginning and like mostly no physical boundaries. You go in, you're all physical, no boundaries. Or you're texting the person every single day, every minute of every single day. Like there are no boundaries there. But there's also like a side to any relationship, and I think even any friendship where there's kind of this like disintegration of boundaries. Like when you think of boundaries as walls, you know, like everybody's got their walls up nowadays. And so it's kind of like, for me, it was less about putting boundaries up and more about letting them down, like letting another person in.
Yeah.
And
Are there
doing
any
that by
specific
being,
boundaries that you guys have set in your relationship that you guys have?
currently?
Yeah.
I think, I mean, one of the things we talked, like when we get into an argument or a disagreement, I think kind of a rule that we've sort of set and we try to abide by is like, okay, let's set some distance.
Yeah, we have to create like physical space if we're in an argument or something in order for there to be like any mental space.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you're just butting heads and like
Yeah.
they're
You can see the person. Yeah.
yeah. So like that's a physical boundary that I guess we
What has been one of the main triggers for your fighting that y'all had?
every fight is like political in nature, or it
Like-
has an undertone of like politics.
Actual politics?
Yeah,
Like American politics?
that's the only thing.
Y'all
embarrassing
are
about-
y'all very political people?
No, we're not political people. I don't think at all.
I'm extremely apolitical. But
Yeah, no.
I don't think we're that political.
It's rooted from,
It's
I think, because I have been a pretty adherent to the Joe Rogan. I'm also very much into Bitcoin, which breeds this like.
Do you have Bitcoin currently?
Yes, I shouldn't tell the cameras. No,
he does have Bitcoin.
I hold.
What's wrong?
I hold Bitcoin.
Yeah.
But like, it's a very much like libertarian,
Yeah.
like don't tread on me,
Yeah.
Texas like philosophy within the Bitcoin community. Joe Rogan's obviously like now become the poster child of like anti-government, anti-establishment, like don't trust big corp, big media, and a lot of it, I mean, for me, it rings true. Like it feels true and it seems true. And listening to a lot of the like expert guests he brings on, it just like
Reaffirms that belief.
yeah. And of course, I'm not going back and doing like checking the studies, and I'm not always like on point, and I'm sometimes erring too much on the side of belief versus skepticism with some of the things I hear and then ascribe to my identity or set of beliefs. So like I'll be overly skeptical or say something, especially as it relates to something in the
Healthcare and science,
yeah, which
as Grant calls it, capital S, science,
yes,
the religion of science.
There-
Grant doesn't believe in science.
At all?
so stupid. No, there's a
He does. This is what we argue about.
yeah, there's a
You can see he's getting mad at me already.
Well,
This said he doesn't believe.
I
in
don't.
science.
Are you mad? You don't seem mad. Are you mad?
no.
Yeah.
You're mad.
I don't think he's mad.
Well, okay, so this is all over the place now, but since you brought it up, capital S science. This is like all the things going on now. Recent last couple of years with, if you're on the far left, if you are a Democrat, and you like identify with that at your core, you were wearing your mask without question. You were double boosting.
Yeah.
You were indoors. You were like,
And if you don't, you're a bad person.
you're a terrible person, and you're condoning everyone for like.
So the environmentalism stuff too, with like Jordan Peterson. I don't know if you heard that was really
Yeah.
interesting.
Yes.
If you're not buying all the environmentalist propaganda, then you're a bad person.
You're not buying Greta Thunberg's newest book.
Then you're a bad person.
Which is
If you don't wear a
pretty
mask, you're a bad person. You don't get vaccinated, you're a bad person. If you don't buy everything that you're learning about the environment, then you're a bad person. And it's like,
So that's the capital S science, which just means like it's been religiousized. If that's
Yeah.
a word.
so you listen to
Believe
that
me.
Jordan Peterson with Joe Rogan recently.
Yeah. So Jordan Peterson's my other
Guru.
recent like guru, if you want to call him
Guru.
that, but just someone that I've been very much deeply in his work and in his teachings and what he has to say. But yeah, he talks about environmentalism in that same light, where it's just like absurd where we've gotten with it, and this is coming from someone who was like voted for Bernie Sanders, or like wanted Bernie Sanders to win in 2016, and was like, you know, the young, let's like everyone has to be given like equality of outcome versus this like equality of opportunity distinction, and
Quality of outcome is a nuts concept.
right, and that's a whole other rabbit hole. I don't even remember where we
Fighting, which I
We're
still
talking
don't understand.
Yeah.
You guys don't seem fighting.
Right.
Where is the fighting coming from? Maybe this will be good for just therapy now. Like, where is the fighting? Like, where are the triggers for?
No, I
for it
think
all?
it boils down to like to stuff that's underneath the surface for both of us. And maybe I'm wrong here, but we were just raised in completely different ways, completely different circumstances, like polar opposite ends of the spectrum. So even though we've both like grown and evolved to kind of like develop our own understanding of how things work politically and what we believe, and it's much more, I think, moderate and in the middle than both sides that we were raised on. Sometimes, you know, I think like it's California versus Texas, and I don't identify with like the politics of California. I don't really think you identify with the politics of Texas specifically, but we can both get, I think, a little bit defensive of like where we come from. Does that make sense?
Defensive of where you come from.
Like
How?
Like an attack on an idea can feel like a personalized
Like you
attack.
guys dislike each other's upbringings.
We don't dislike each other's upbringings. No, it's not that. It's just that there's this like, how do you articulate
So
it?
let's just, the example case is we were skiing in Mammoth Mountain,
Yeah, this is an example fight.
and I brought up.
When was this?
This is a month ago.
December. This isn't. Yeah.
2 months ago.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I'm pretty sure that ventilators early on when COVID was first happening killed more people than it saved.
You said ventilators killed more people than COVID.
Or killed more people than COVID killed people early on. And this is like, I was wrong. Really wrong. But I thought I heard something on that.
Which I'm sure you did on Joe Rogan or some podcast.
Yeah.
Like it's.
And I threw it out there, and it was maybe a soundbitey like.
But you were very sure. You're like, no, I'll defend this idea to the death. Like
No.
ventilators killed more people.
How
than
would a
COVID.
ventilator kill someone?
So
Exactly.
early.
And then I'm a nurse, and I worked during COVID.
Yeah, that's a good.
So it's like, it was kind of like this whole no grant. Like I was there. I know that that's not how it works. Like people, like ventilators don't kill people. People die on ventilators from COVID, from comorbidities. Like the ventilators aren't killing the people. But this turned into an actual argument, like an actual fight. Like this is how dumb our fights are.
So how it like evolved.
It's kind of silly.
It's very silly.
Yeah, but
They're all like this.
it basically like we're.
But they
back
become
and forth,
actual
back and forth.
fights.
They
Where you
become
guys are
actual
actually
fights.
angry with each other.
Well,
Yeah.
so what happens is
Are you angry with her, or is it just one sided?
no, it's typically because I love to like get into the weeds of like a debate and have
Yeah, same.
back and forth
Yeah.
conversation, and I think Aurora there's like an emotional investment, which I think maybe I'm misarticulating, but like there's an identity in that argument where like I'm a nurse, I have like invested a lot of time, money, energy into.
But like it wasn't about that. It's just about the facts versus the propaganda. Like the facts versus like framing it in a light where saying that ventilators kill more people than COVID is making people afraid of the hospital. It's like painting this mirror that healthcare is more dangerous than COVID, which is really controversial, and a lot of people do believe
there can be propaganda on both sides too.
Totally, and there is for
Yeah.
sure. There is for sure, but this was just such a narrow thing where it's like, no. And sure, I do identify with like being a nurse because I am a nurse, and I did work during COVID,
Yeah.
so it was just sort of this. I think I did get like a little bit offended as like, why aren't you believing me?
Mm-hmm.
Like I lived this experience, like, and we're a team, so you're supposed to respect, what I have to say if it's true, but you just wanted to nail it down, even though you were wrong, and you admit that now.
Well, it did. A lot of people did die on ventilators unnecessarily. They eventually stopped putting people on ventilators because it was killing people at a faster clip.
It wasn't helpful.
It wasn't helping.
Proning turned out to be more helpful than putting people on a ventilator.
What's proning?
Proning is where the patient is turned upside down, basically.
Huh.
Almost like you're on a massage table.
Huh.
But
Sounds really hard to breathe.
yeah, but it's, try being on a ventilator.
Yeah. Jeez.
But yeah, that's a narrow example.
I think there's a lot of hope for you guys because that seems like a very
It
honestly
seems really stupid.
seems
doesn't
very easy to overcome. A very easy obstacle, really just based in miscommunication and communication issues. And that sounds like I've had a lot of crazier fights with my exes than what you guys just described. So
Yeah, that was probably one of our worst fights.
Right.
wow,
Well, then the health.
this is goals, guys. This is a goal relationship right here. So.
The student debt forgiveness. Which
Oh
is
yeah,
also political.
that's
in nature
super personal.
and personal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Again, same thing though. It's political and it's personal.
A lot of people are single in their 20s. They're after you graduate and you find something that you feel like you want to do. One of the biggest next questions is, who are you going to be with? Who is your partner going to be? So an interesting part of your relationship was that sex was something that you guys waited on. You said, this is not going to be the focus of our relationship on the onset. We're not going to just run into things. We're not going to have sex and then fall in love. We're going to really focus on developing an emotional, mental, spiritual connection before we bring in the very powerful force of sex, right? So it's great. It's great. Now you guys have a sexual outlet as yourselves that you can kind of like deal with your sexual urges in like in a way that is received and nurtured and loved in an intimate and good way. I'm assuming you guys don't watch porn, right?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
So porn is that's a whole other conversation, but I think for a lot of us, we can see it as an unhealthy practice and addictive, just very addictive, and not something that we want to get in the practice of living out our sexual desires through porn. So for y'all, do you have any advice for single young people, high libidos that have this sexual desire, haven't found a partner that they feel secured in yet, but don't want to go have sex with someone they meet on Tinder and don't want to watch porn? Like how should someone respond to that sexual urge?
Discipline equals freedom. I mean, you can just not respond until you meet the right person. That's always an option, you know?
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's the right option. There's a million different options, but that's one.
Yeah, I don't think the answer, well, I agree, like, in the essence of that, but, like, the typical, maybe traditional retort to that from, like, a Christian priest or something, which is just, like, abstain. And that's not helpful.
Yeah, it's not helpful.
I think, like, the more nuanced version of that is, like, going back to the identity piece that we were hitting on earlier, like, what kind of person, what kind of man, what kind of woman do you want to be? And then, like, what kind of partner, what kind of man do you have to be to get the partner that you want, that you desire, that you think you deserve? And it's like, if you know in your heart, you know, and you're going home and you're like beating off to like discussing porn, that's having like it's like a nasty, it's like watching shitty TV like The Bachelor or eating a bag of potato chips. Like, you feel gross because it's like you're consuming something that is terrible. Like, it is actually destroying your like body, spirit, mind, in a tangible way. And so, like, if you want to be that fit person, not just physically but like emotionally, mentally, then that is what, like, that identity to that superior like version of yourself that you're maybe not yet now, but like you want to be that person to get the person that you ultimately want to be with. That's what, like, at least for me, helps prior to us, you know, dating, and then throughout our relationship has, like, it's honestly not even much of a thought because the habit's so ingrained, one, but two, it's like I don't want to like have that on my conscience that I'm like doing something that's
Do you guys
toxic.
consider porn cheating?
We talked about that. Not.
Yeah, I don't particularly consider it cheating, but I don't really have much of an opinion because in this relationship, like, you don't watch porn.
Yeah.
I think if it was something that was really important to you, maybe we could have like an open conversation about it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't necessarily, I mean, that's hard.
Yeah.
That's hard.
So what should a young single person do, especially like men, like with that like how should you channel that sexual urge in like a healthy way? Are you saying like trying to, Aurora sounded like you're saying like kind of like deny that sexual urge until you feel
channel it
maybe
you know,
something else,
something better, like bettering yourself for your future partner.
Yeah.
Maybe.
But just not. Yeah.
I don't know how realistic that is for guys to just channel sexual energy into.
It's hard. Sexual force is really hard.
I mean, there's like books I've read that talk about how to like literally. I mean, our buddy Lane that we were connecting with last weekend talks about like channeling that energy in a way that allows it to release cathartically. Or I don't understand it. There's some woo-ness there.
There's like Eastern practices that involve that.
Yeah.
It's like your Kundalini energy is your sexual energy.
Yeah. I'm not familiar per se. It obviously helps having like a partner.
Yeah.
And where like
super great if you have a good partner. But for people that don't, it's like how you know, when those urges come up, how do you maintain control? Where, you know, like discipline equals freedom. How do you get sexual freedom where you don't feel like, oh, I got triggered sexually, so now I need to go watch porn, or now I need to go get off, or I can't, man, I'm just so distracted all day thinking about sex.
Yeah.
I need to go take care of this. It's something that like a lot of guys describe. I have girlfriends that say that similarly too, but it seems like guys tend to be like, I don't know, it's like an itch you have to scratch.
Yeah.
So I was just curious, maybe when you were single, or just advice you have for a single person that is trying to get a handle on that.
Yeah. I mean, I just would basically the simple way, as I was thinking about it, like going back to the Atomic Habits book, if you don't want to eat junk food, don't buy junk food.
Yeah.
Don't keep it in your house. So basically, create the most friction you possibly can for the thing you're trying to not do. And so if it's
I
like,
can do that with porn though. It's like so accessible.
well, I didn't do this personally, but one of my buddies actually installed an app that allowed one of my other buddies' dads
To see whatever
is in the search history.
Yeah.
And so there's like an accountability.
Yeah.
If you want to go that far, you can. I personally had never done that, but there's things you can do.
Hey, Mr. Jolly.
Oh no.
So
that's funny.
But yeah, for like different apps, like for Instagram, for example, you can set a timer.
Yeah, we both do that.
Which we both do. Is like, I don't want to be on Instagram more than 5 minutes a day. Like, and so I have a timer that cuts me off, cuts us both off, I guess.
5 minutes.
So there's things you can do.
Yeah, that's hard though. I mean, there's also the thing that like you guys aren't talking about, which is just like masturbation.
Yeah.
Yeah. What?
Without it.
Without porn.
Without porn. Yeah.
And
like use your imagination.
Right.
Be creative.
Yeah. Maybe that's healthier.
Yeah.
Probably
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
I would think.
Right. And and there's people that may view that even as like a defilement or as morally
there's definitely
reprehensible. But
Right.
like
I would love to ask them if they feel like their sexual practices is healthy. Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
If they,
is it inhibiting them or helping them?
yeah. Like, do they feel at peace with when it comes to sex? There are Christian couples that will get married, and because they were told sex was bad for so long, they get married and they still feel guilt after they have sex. They're married. They still feel guilt after they have sex.
Right.
They get married and they're like, it's not that good. It's not that good. You know what I mean? Like,
because there's all this shame and guilt around
and anticipation of thinking that it's going to be like this groundbreaking euphoria because, we're really not going to have sex. And then they get married and they're like, I don't know what I'm doing.
Right.
So
this is it.
yeah. So trying to find like a healthy way to really do it. It sucks that it's so taboo. Sex is
It's like very stigmatized.
sex is such a big part of who we are. It's a principal part of our DNA to reproduce.
That's why we're here.
It's why we're here, right? But it's something that is like, it's awkward to talk about. Like we don't want our parents hearing our sexual conversation. You know what I mean? We feel it's not something that we feel we can be vulnerable with. We can talk about. Like, there are certain best things, there are certain things that are egregiously wrong, and it's a big part of our life, and I think it's important to openly speak about these things. So
absolutely.
no judgment, and we're all just trying to grow and do the best we can. So anyway, thanks for joining us today, guys.
Yeah,
that was
to
good.
Do another session when we